Hi, we want to introduce you to our ice rescue components, and we want to start in talking about the importance of the environmental considerations of what we're getting into. And primarily we want to start with focusing on the environmental conditions that make our techniques and our tactics alter from our standard water applications. So the obvious factor is temperature. Whether it's developing ice layers on the surface as well as the actual temperature of the flowing water or the static water underneath the ice, that dramatically impacts us as rescuers physiologically as well as our victims. That in that hypothermic state, victims don't have the same abilities to grab things that we throw to them or that we reach to them. So their ability to grab things, control things, and manipulate their own bodies decrease significantly in these cold weather types of environments. So we can't just throw bags to them typically. We're having to grab them or do a lot more go rescue type applications. So the go rescue becomes a much more predominant technique choice, or it moves higher up on that scale of approach. Remember that we want to follow our standard sequences of reaching, throwing, rowing, and going, but our time is very, very compressed in this type of environment, and we may have to move towards that go rescue in a faster application than we would in some normal water-based applications. So we hope that this channel and these ice components impact the way that your organization is operating on ice rescue events, and that we give you some quick and effective and efficient tools and techniques to hopefully accomplish those ice rescues. So I want to dialogue about some basic responsibilities, all the key things we're going to focus on when we get on scene. And what we want to convey is that when you first arrive on scene, one of the most important things that you can do is obtain that competent person, do some sort of an interview, very rapid style, to identify where the victim's at and create some benchmarks on the far bank and the near bank so that you can kind of pinpoint where that last known location was with the victim. One of the great things about ice is typically we've got some telltale signs about where that victim's at and how they got there. So whether you can see little footprints going across the ice, you can see that breach point in the ice, a lot of times those give us some good visual identifiers where that victim is at. From a safety perspective, we want to make sure that as we approach that bank as that first arriving company, that we've got some form of appropriate PPE on. At a minimum, we're talking about some minimal thermal protection and some PFDs. Get that bank work done, get those assessments done, identify that victim, and then wait for your other resources to get there to start affecting your rescue plan. Now, John, as a guru or a commander or an officer, a guy that's getting on scene and kind of going to run the event, what are the considerations that you're going to add from a responsibilities perspective to just what that initial crew has already established for you?
Well, I think that the situation is all dependent on the victim's condition. What type of victim we're going after, you know, what their abilities are, their capabilities are, and that those first initial responders that make that assessment of the victim's condition dictates a lot of what we're going to be able to do. That victim condition, you know, whether he's able to self-rescue or whether he's going to be able to hold on to a rope or if he's going to be able to reach a ladder or if he's completely submerged, you know, dictates everything.
Okay, we're going to walk through what those responsibilities are for that primary and secondary backup group, and understand that that is the most versatile team on the operating ground initially, because they could very quickly elect to become primary and secondary rescuers if the victim's condition presents that way. So John and I get on scene, we've each got a reaching component, we've each got a throwing component, and we're outfitted and prepared to make entry if we need to make entry and go into a go rescue mode. Anything else you got to add to that, John, about what we're going to be doing initially getting off the truck?
We are fortunate because we're complemented with our full rescue equipment, all our cold water immersion suit and stuff like that. Remember that the first companies on the scene could potentially be an EMS unit, a squad or a medic or something that arrives on the scene, and at a basic minimum they're going to have a life jacket and throwing equipment. Okay, so they may not have the full range of protection to perform a go rescue, but still be very critical in performing that rescue and making that assessment.
All right, so John and I are on scene. We've got our tool loads. We're going to take off towards the ice. Okay, so when we get up close to the ice surface, hopefully we've obtained that competent person. We've gathered some information about our victim. John and I are going to immediately divvy up between primary and secondary backup personnel, or if it turns into it, rescue personnel. John's going to go ahead and become the primary guy. I'm going to become the secondary guy.
All right, Dalen, I want you to go ahead and take a walk around that side over there and take a look and check for any other victims.
Got it.
I'm going to turn around and go this way.
All right, as the secondary guy, as I'm making my way around the space, I'm assessing that ice and the environment. Remember, the primary guy's focused on the victim. I'm focused on access points, approach, and potentially what kind of resource we're gonna have to use to get from the bank or the open water to the victim out on the ice. So one of the primary things I'm looking for is how stable is the ice, how thick is the ice, and for what degree is it intact. So when I'm assessing this ice, I want to try and assess cleaned areas or areas where I can truly see ice. I want to basically sound it just like I would a floor in a fire-based application. When I'm checking that ice, if I get any type of pierce or any break on that surface and I have percolating water or any water that's coming up through cracks, that tells me I've either got layers of ice separated by moving water or that I've got very, very thin ice. Either way, both of those are pretty unstable applications. I also can look at color changes and snow facets along the bank. All of those play roles into insulating the ice or not insulating the ice, creating weak points and strong points. The fissures, the cracks, wind sweeps. If I've got a cornice of ice coming up and then a break point beneath, that is also going to tell me that I've got layers upon layers. So when I'm looking at that, what I'm trying to do is formulate a plan about how we're going to potentially gain access to that victim. I'm also looking at the break point where the victim is and trying to gather as much information as I can visually and from our competent person about what the estimated size is of that victim. So I'm listening to John's interaction, I'm looking at the victim. If it's a small child or someone small like that, they may have made it all the way out to the middle of the body of water. But us as rescuers weighing 200 plus pounds, we may make it 6 feet and break through. So anytime you have unstable ice or weak ice, immediately assume that there is a high likelihood that you're going to have to go to a float-based application to get to that victim. Whether it's a sled or whether it's a boat, a RIT craft, a banana boat, some type of inflatable base, or a large-scale load distribution application. Otherwise, we're going to just poke through every time we try and progress towards that victim.
Get myself set up. I'm looking out across the ice. I'm looking for my victim. I'm doing a quick assessment of the environment. Hey, are you all right? Hang in there. We're the fire department. We're going to be here to help you. Is there anybody else in the water with you? Depending on the answers that I get, the feedback I get back from the victim is what we'll be able to do. As I make contact with that victim, I want to get good eye contact. Hey, look at me. Over here. Focus on me. You want to use a loud voice. You want to be able to gather his spirit, gather his mind, because a lot of times you got to remember they are hypothermic. They're not being able to make good sound decisions. Once you get that victim focused on you, then you could go with a throwing application. I got rope. Rope. Ideally, once I get that victim to grab a hold of the rope, hold on tight, put it over your shoulder. I want to get in a good athletic stance. Once he has that rope, if he has a good hold, tight up grip on it, then I'm going to start bringing him in. Again, a good athletic stance. Your weight is back on your back foot, and you bring your victim in. Dalen, did you see anybody else?
It's clear, John. Okay, as the primary and secondary backup guys, when we're going through our sequences, not just throwing, but reaching is also a very, very viable option for us. We can also combine the two entities in ice applications much more effectively than we can in moving water, even static water applications. So when we talk about reaching, we're talking about taking our tools. We really love telescoping handles because you can get a lot of extension on those and reach way out there. Remember, our victims probably aren't going to be real good at grabbing and holding on. So we need things like grappling hooks, pike poles, things where we can hopefully hook an element that's not going to cause bodily injury and pull them across the ice. If we don't have the ability to fully reach them and they're further away than our tool, we can simply take our throw bag lines, attach those to our reaching devices, and then it's almost like bowling is the motion that I described, and we can launch those devices across the surface of the ice towards the victim, and they'll bounce across and slide till they get to the victim's hole, hopefully, give them something to grab onto or us something to hook them with, and then use our throw bag line to pull them back into the shore. To combine throwing and reaching techniques, simply take the handle of your extension tool or your reaching tool, take your throw bag, make a simple and recognized knot using a clove hitch. Cinch that component down. Once that's set, you've now got a capture point on this device so that you can launch it across the ice surface.
Another good one that the fire department uses and can deploy very easily is an extension ladder. Extension ladder or an attic ladder. The extension is great because I can put it on the base, on the shore, and I can reach it and scoot that right across out to the victim. We can tie it off with ropes on the ends, you know, help guide it, manipulate it a little bit, and it does give that victim a larger target. You know, if they can get that arm, they can almost hook an arm into a rung. You know, if they can at least get that arm inside a rung, then we've got them, and that's an easier target to hold on to versus, you know, a pike pole or something like that. A smaller device, you know, it's hard to maintain that grip even when you're not pulled.
Yeah.
You know? So the larger the target, the larger device is that the person, one, can fix their eyes on it. It's like, I got it, I see it, I can reach it, I can grab it, I can hook my arm into it, the better application it would be.
Now, which way are we going to bring the ladder once it gets to the victim?
We're the closest point is to the shore.
Right. Okay, can you reach out to him? All right. Tighten up his line. Pick up the slack on his. Just give him a little, just tighten that up. All right, good. Grab a chunk of ice. Now, Craig, go ahead and bring him in. Excellent.
We discussed the backup team's primary roles, those first on scene guys, and what their responsibilities are. When you and I arrive as the primary secondary rescue group, once we get on scene, we want that quick assessment from our backup guys, ice and victim, and then quickly we'll divvy up which one of us are primary, which one of us are secondary. The secondary guy is going to facilitate getting the primary guy dressed first. One guy ready to go. Hopefully other people start trickling in by then that can help get the secondary guy dressed and ready to go. Once we've got that established, we're going to take all that information from our guys and formulate that action sequence plan with our rescue officer. So as the rescue group, when we know we got to go boat based on a day like today where we've got soft, unstable ice, what are some key considerations that you're really thinking about?
Well, one thing is personnel. You know, we talked about our 5-person team, you know, with our primary and secondary rescuers, which is the component that we're talking about right now. But when we add a boat component to it, we know that the ice conditions are now boat. We have to get our boat operator, our person that's his skill set, that's his job, his responsibility to use the boat, to gather the equipment, to make sure we pick the right apparatus, a right boat for this application. Make sure you have ropes, carabiners, paddles, reaching device, an extra PPE for the victim once we get out there. You know, I think a lot of times we forget about that one. You know, we go out there and go after our victim, and you know, we got to grab a hold of them and get some kind of flotation device on them as quickly as possible. And those are the key components for that person. So getting a few more people on the scene is critical to help get the boat ready. You know, whether we have to inflate it or whether we're having an aluminum hull John boat or whatever the boat we're going to use, you know, we have to get that boat ready. And again, we have to think about the access. Well, where am I going to put this boat at? Do we have a nice environment here where we got a really soft, easy bank to get the boat down into the position, or are we going to have a big steep bank and it's going to be a long distance and we're going to have to carry the boat over a long period of time, so that again it requires more manpower. So all those things have to be brought into consideration when we go to the boat-based application.
One of the nice things about ice, and one of the things that we're big advocates of when we're referring to boat-based operations, understand that we're going to show you a lot of quick applications that utilize things within the boat category that don't really qualify as boats. So if you can use a rescue sled, a RIT sled, some type of personal-based buoyant device in an ice application, it's safe, it's effective, and it's 10 times faster and less manpower intensive than pulling out your full-size boat, whether it's John or inflatable. Absolutely. So we're going to hit all those options, and we're going to kind of talk about the pluses and minuses of each of those as a rescue team. A nice thing about a craft like this for deployment for John and I as a rescue team is how incredibly lightweight it is. Note that we have an inflatable floor in this. There's no rigid segments in it. Although this does give some rigidity to the boat, typically speaking, the rear portion of this craft in an ice application is going to be our nose or our approaching angle with this type of craft to get to the victim. That way we have this open end with no transom, so that we get to the victim, we can grab that victim, pull that victim directly in.
Well, generally speaking, depending on the ice, we're going to look at the environment itself. We're going to try to stay outside the craft for a little while, for as far as we possibly can. You know, if we're in this position right here in a three-point stance, and you and I are scooting the boat, holding on to this handle, we can touch, we can feel the ice, do the same type of tactics of sounding the floor, you know, for all intent and purposes, sounding the ice, sounding the floor, being the same. We're going to look for the best location. Our front end will be tied off to the shore. The guys on shore will be helping us, and we'll go as far as we possibly can. Once the ice starts breaking apart, though, and we can't go any further outside the craft, we can simply slip right into the boat, right into this position. You and I can both straddle each side of the sponsons and then use our paddles. We can use our paddles and row across if we have to. Again, with all inflatables, you want to inflate till they're kind of just slightly indented as we push in on the sides. Remember that this craft does have its pop off, so when one pops off, then it's completely inflated. The great feature about this is as we're moving this craft across the ice and I get to the victim, you can almost imagine as I'm moving this onto my target, all right, when I move it into the target, the victim comes right in here and I can easily pull them right into this victim area. And then the great other feature is that all the multiple attachment points are onto the boat here can be tethered off the shore. Once we bring the victim into the craft, then we can call for our rescuers on the shore to pull us in. As we're moving the craft out to the victim, the same application can be on the sides, sounding the ice. We're dragging it, we're in good athletic three-point stance, we're dragging it out there. If we break through the ice, we can quickly jump onto the boat, onto the sides, and we can paddle out to them.
One other big asset to using inflatables in the ice environment is when we truly have moving water. So when we've got that river or a functional current that we can't really assess, one of the last things we want to have happen is for us to punch through that ice surface. Yeah. Because we have no idea how much current underneath that surface is going to pull us, take us, direct us, or drag us under. Using crafts like this on those river-based applications is much, much safer than going out on your own.
It gives us a lot of options.
Okay, we've arrived on the scene, And Dalen and I have dressed out in our full PPE, and we are the primary and secondary rescuers. We've received report from our primary and secondary backup about our victim, the condition of the ice, and we've developed a rescue plan based on that information. We're going to use a rescue sled or a rescue RIT craft as a deployment measure. Dalen is going to make sure that he gets tied off to shore using either our X harness or using the integrated harness into his back, and he's going to demonstrate going out on the ice, sounding the floor, sweeping the snow off of it, checking for cracks, fissures, weakness in the ice, and he's going to start out standing, shuffling his feet, never taking any steps. Then he's going to drop down to a 3-point stance where he'll be able to get in a good athletic position, sounding the ice as he makes his way out there. Eventually he'll end up in a full prone position and end up using the ice awls, digging his way and making his way to the victim. Just remember that when you're doing these applications, you're doing your boat-based techniques, your go rescues, your shore-based techniques, you need to have an action plan. You need to develop SOGs and guidelines within your organization. You got to look at your people, your personnel, your training, your equipment, and develop those SOGs. We are going to show you different styles of rescue operations and give you options. You know, it is up to your department and your organization to follow those plans, set up those SOGs, and follow those guidelines and practice those guidelines throughout the year.